Hey everyone, this is Lel already from Abstrakt Music Lab, and today we're going to talk about one of my special tricks for mixing, which is EQ matching. EQ matching is a trick that I use for every mix that I do. Literally every mix that I do, I use EQ matching, whether it's for me, whether it's for a client. And EQ matching is something that you can guide your mix through where you want it to go to. So today I'm going to explain to you 4 things about EQ matching. Why use EQ matching, how to use EQ matching, when to use EQ matching, and lastly, a couple recommendations of how to use it, how to better understand what to do with EQ matching. So let's dive into the project. Hope you guys like this video, and I talk to you guys in the project. Let's go. So let's start with why should we use EQ matching? And the first reason for using EQ matching is it is a guide. It could be a guide for you to mix your tracks. And it could be a guide for you to, if you're lost, if you don't know where to go next, and if you want to test your tracks compared to tracks that are already released, it could be a guide that you could test your tracks and see if something is lacking from your track. Reason number 2, in addition to that, could be something for you to make your track a little bit more similar to tracks that are being released in a label. So for example, you want to sign to label X meaning whatever label you want. You could pick some tracks from label X and you can see how they sound like and use one of their tracks as a reference for you. So this way, when you're sending your track to label X, it will be something that they have already signed before in terms of how it sounds. So it could be a way for you to get a little bit ahead on sending something that they're already familiar with. But honestly, the reason why I use it is mainly to check my mixes and make sure that I'm going the right way. And if I'm not going the right way, it helps me redirect where I'm going. And maybe, let's say, just to give an example, it could be a way for you to, let's say you don't know if your mid bass is a little bit too loud or too quiet. You can use this EQ matching for you to make sure that your track is not as loud as your reference track. Okay, but first of all, what is EQ matching? EQ matching is simply matching the track 1 EQ curve to the track 2 EQ curve. So you have a target curve, you have a source curve, and you're going to match them. You're going to match the source into the target curve. Of course, there are a lot of variables inside of them, but if you do exactly the adjustments that EQ matching is going to suggest you, your song is going to sound exactly like the other. I'm not going to say exactly, I'm going to say with the same frequencies as the other. There are a lot of things that could change if you don't do a good mix, but this could help you get to one track, okay? Okay, but how do we do EQ matching? So let's go into our EQ matching tool and let's see what it sounds like, okay? So the EQ matching tool, as I said to you, it has a target curve and it has a source curve. You're gonna make the source curve sound exactly like the target curve according to these parameters. These are specific for isotopes, okay? What is smoothing? Smoothing, it's basically, let me show it to you. So if you turn on EQ matching with 50% smoothing, you're going to get what's happening. This is with 0% smoothing. This is what you have to do. It's too vague, okay? It's too vague. So if I go to 50%, it already shows me the major trends of what do I need to do, okay? If I go to 100%, that's going to vary a lot, mainly because my track is in D minor and my reference track is in F sharp minor. So if I compare both of them, there are a lot of frequencies that are not going to play in one track that are playing in the other track. So I don't use 0% smoothing, I use 50% smoothing because this tells me the major trends of what I need to do. For example, in this scenario, and I'm going to explain you how to do everything, but in this scenario, it's showing me that I need to lower a little bit of my, let's call it mid bass, around 300 hertz. I need to raise a little bit of my 100 hertz. I could raise a little bit of my 10K plus, and I need to raise a lot of this would be probably 16,000, 18,000 hertz. Anyway, but it's giving me a map of what I should do, okay? And now I'm gonna clean this up, and I'm just going to show how I would apply to my tracks and how you should apply to your tracks. So regardless of your genre, this method works, but there are a couple of things that are important for you to make sure that it's working. So number 1, you have to make sure that the tracks are similar. So you don't want to use a house music track as a reference for a progressive trance track. You want to use a progressive trance with a progressive trance. In addition to that, you don't want to use a track that, just to give you an example, you want to use similar tracks. So let's say that your drop one has a really high top lead. In this scenario, I would recommend your reference track to have a really prominent top lead as well in the drop one. Otherwise, you could be matching stuff that it's not matchable, let's say like this. In addition to that, you want to match specific sections together. So you don't want to match drop 2 to drop 1. You want to match your drop 1 to the drop 1 of the reference track. You want to match the first 8 bars of your track to the first 8 bars of the reference track. You want to be able to do exactly this and be really methodical about this, because by doing this, you'll be able to match apples with apples, oranges with oranges, okay? So for this example, I'm gonna match the first 8 bar of the drop 1 with the first 8 bar of the drop 1 from the reference track. So let's go. So first of all, I'm gonna capture the reference track. Okay, now my track. This is what it's telling me for me to do in order to be exactly like my reference track. It's telling me to lower the low end. It's telling me to raise a little bit of the mid lows. It's telling me to raise a little bit of the mids and to lower the highs as well. So my third recommendation to you is you don't need to do all of these adjustments. You have to do adjustments that make sense to you. So for example, this part over here, it's probably telling me this because, one, either the tracks are similar and I am really prominent with my high end, or the tracks have a different kind of high end, so they're not really matchable in that realm, okay? Let's listen to the track and check this. Now let's check my track. So one of the main differences from my track to the reference track is that my track has a mid bass, and I know this for a fact, that it's really prominent here in the 10K plus. It has this little pss that the reference track doesn't have. So this could be a difference, okay? And this could be why I need to lower this part so much. Do I need to take this? No, I'm not taking this. So, because I like the way it sounds, so I'm not considering this. But what about this? Is my track that mid bass heavy as the reference track? So first of all, what are we talking here? What is this frequency over here? If you don't know what frequency you're talking about, just pick a EQ and do something like this to really grab. So here I'm grabbing from 200 to 500. This is my track, reference track. Now let's try to listen to this specific region. Reference. The reference track is indeed more prominent in that region. So let's show you how to do this adjustment. So step number 4, do I do the adjustment in the master bus? Do I use the EQ matching to do the adjustment? Where do I use it? Okay. So you're not going to use the EQ matching to actively do anything. You're just going to use the EQ matching as a guide to what you're going to do next. So this tells me that I need to raise this kind of layer over here in my track. What is the most prominent part of my track with these frequencies over here? And this is the mid bass, as I've showed you over here. Where is the mid bass? Mid bass. So it's telling me that I should raise around 3 dB here, around 330, 340. So let's do exactly this, 335, 3 dB. Let's see how it sounds like. Three dB. And let's retake our track. Well, it got a lot better. Now it's only saying that I should do around 1 dB. Okay, so let me just go here and do 1 dB again. 330, let's go 330, 1 dB. And let's retake. Okay, so let's see how I got after these adjustments. So, well, it still needs a little bit over here, around 300, but that's recommendation number 5. You don't actually need to be exactly like a flat line compared to a reference track. This is something that it's guiding you, but you don't necessarily need to be exactly like it. As I've shown you before in the beginning, without these adjustments over here, this is how I actually release a track. So you don't need to be a flat line, and it all depends on your references. So don't take this too seriously and just use this as a guide of what might be wrong, but definitely try to use your ears as well to make sure that this is actually wrong. Now let's see another example. Let's see something about the high end, and let's see how the same reference applies throughout the whole spectrum and throughout other regions of the spectrum. Let's go to the last part of the drop 1. And now your track. Okay, so it's actually telling me now that I should raise in 2 dB around 10K, that I should raise in, I don't know, 2 dB around 800 hertz, and lower around 500, around 1 dB. First of all, again, do I need to be a flat line? No, you don't. So would that be okay? I would say it's okay. I say it's a fine line. But let's say I want to get better. So let's say we're talking about this region over here. How can we get closer to our reference track? So if you listen to the reference track, and compare it to your track, you can check one element that in the reference track is a little bit louder, and it's within this region over here. Okay, Leo, but how are you listening? How do you know what is this region? So if you don't know what is this region, pick an EQ, put it in 10,000 hertz, 10,000, yep. We're talking about high end, we're talking about rides. So basically, reference track. Okay, this is hi-hats, high stuff, okay, high end. So for that, I know that it's something that needs to be higher. I know that it's something that needs to be in the high end, and I've listened to what it is, and I know for a fact that when I listen to the rides, which is this element over here, okay, this could be it. Listen to the reference track. This pss, 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 that could be louder, okay? So what am I doing here? I'm coming here and I'm raising it in 2 dB. Let's go 2 dB. Let's go 1 dB here, 3 here, and let's go into the hi-hats and raise it also in 1.5. Let's see how it sounds first of all. Now it sounds similar, but now let's check with the reference track. it got a lot closer. So did you see that the reference track, it's not there. I'm not copying the reference track. I'm just using it as a way to make sure that my mix is on par. And I normally do this with 2, 3 other tracks. So for example, let's say you want to mix the top 2K to reference track 1, and you want to mix everything that's below 2K to the reference track 2. You can do this. You can match this to the one track and match this to another track and do them simultaneously. If you're only matching to one track, as long as you got a curve that you like, and after you've done this, you listen to it, it sounds nice and nothing sounds overdone, that's where you have to go. And that's the way you can make sure that your tracks is well mixed, and you can make sure that your track is in a good spot to be delivered, in a good spot to be mastered. And the last part is, when do you use EQ matching? Do you use it only in the master? Do you use it while you're creating? And the answer is, it doesn't matter, okay? I would recommend you to use all the time. I use it all the time when I'm creating, when I'm mixing, when I'm mastering, because it's such a tool that helps me to understand what are my next steps. So let's say I'm creating and I want to do a quick mix. This helps me guide my creation, my little creation project, to where it needs to go to sound competitive against other tracks. Another place that you can use EQ matching is right before you export your channels to stems for the mixing project to start. You do a little bit of EQ matching over there, following the same technique that I've showed you today, to understand what could I do to make my mixing a little bit easier in the next step. And lastly, you can use in your master or in your mix to guide you through the mixing and mastering decisions that you have to take, and make sure that your track, it's compatible, it's sounding the way you want it to be. And the reference track is just a guide for you to, okay, do I want to follow this? Do I want not to follow this? I like it, how it sounds like this. But you have to listen to your track. Don't follow EQ matching blindly, because it could lead you to wrong results. EQ matching is not a tool, but as a guide to let you know that maybe you need to rise the chords, maybe you need to rise the hi-hats. This could be really helpful. And that's it. I hope you guys liked this video. If you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and please leave a comment letting me know if you're going to use this EQ matching technique in your tracks as well. And that's it for today. Hope you guys liked the video. Cheers. See you in the next one.